welcome in three-time NBA All-Star, 1982 Rookie of the Year. Let's welcome in Buck Williams. Buck, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing fine, Larry. How about you, man?
I'm doing good, buddy. Just full of energy, a lot going on in the world of sports, and really, really happy to have you on, and hopefully you had a terrific new year.
I sure did, and I've been sitting backstage kind of watching you do your thing, and it's kind of nice to see the excitement and of the teams in North Carolina. They're doing well. The Charlotte Hornets has sort of been a surprise this year. So we all excited about our Hornets.
And, you're from North Carolina, Buck, and I remember, obviously you played in the ACC in the late 70s and 80s. But I got to ask you this. When you were finishing up your college career, I believe it was like 1981 at Maryland, there was a young coach starting at Duke University named Mike Krzyzewski, and I know you got to play against him for 1 year, but talk about Coach K, what you remember back then, because that was his first year coaching, and how amazing it is to look up and get to watch him in his final year at Duke right before us.
Well, there are some coaches that I played for and some coaches I played against, and one of those coaches was Larry Brown. And Larry Brown's whole philosophy is playing the right way. That means you're going to defend, you're going to share the basketball, and you're going to play as a team. And there's some coaches that kind of pedigree, and Coach K is one of those kind of coaches. I mean, all his players over the years have been able to be well-rounded. Fundamentally, they always share the ball. They always defend, and I always respected Coach K for that. Other coaches are Coach Smith. He recruited me in high school and same philosophy, share the basketball, defend, the best of your abilities, and he would bring along very slowly. People always say, about Michael Jordan. So who's the best defender ever played Michael Jordan? They always say Dean Smith, because Coach Smith would always bring his players along very slowly. He wouldn't give them too much too soon. And I think nowadays with all the younger players coming to college, they getting so much too soon and they don't get developed as a player. But Larry Brown, Coach Smith, Coach K, those guys have the same DNA. And I respect them for their coaching ability, how they were able to bring their players along and develop their players and make them part of the system.
Now, let me ask you this, Buck. Being not only were you picked third overall in the NBA draft, but now you got to go play in the media capital of the world. Yes, it was the New Jersey Nets, but we know about the New York media. How much, if any? I mean, obviously by your performance, you didn't feel a lot of extra pressure, but as a young man, going from college to New York, from Carolina, Maryland area, how much did it affect you, and how much extra pressure did you feel?
Larry, I think it's a great question. I started playing basketball late. I just started playing organized basketball into the 9th grade. So I started in 9th grade. By the time it's 12th grade, it's another 3 years and 3 more years in college. 6 years removed, I'm in the NBA. And I have to credit Coach Drizel for preparing me. He really coached a man-on-man defense. He coached a lot of hustle, a lot of grit. And he really further nurtured, my work ethic. And so when I went to the pros, I was well prepared after, playing in Maryland for 3 years. And I credit Coach Drizel for that. I mean, System Diddy Runs was a pro-style offense and pro-style defense. So it was real smooth. I got a chance to play against a lot of the All-Stars in 1980, that team that I was on, the Olympic team. It was boycotted, and so we played against all the NBA All-Stars that year summer with 4-1. But Isaiah Thomas, myself, Mark Aguirre, and Sam Boyd. So to answer your question, it was a smooth transition from my experience playing on that 1980 Olympic team to play against the NBA All-Stars and playing in Coach Drizel's system, which prepared me very well for the pros.
Now, when you did get to the pros, you obviously NBA Rookie of the Year, your first year, All-Star team, first couple of years. I mean, you did adapt very quickly to that game, and I know, like you said, you got to play with a lot of these NBA guys, but when you got to the NBA, did it seem any faster than when you played with those guys on the Olympics, or did it seem to be slowed down for you due to the experience you did have?
Well, it was so interesting because my sophomore year, Coach Rizzo told me that summer that I have to play the center position. So at that time, at the center position at Duke, it was Mike Kaminsky. At Clemson, they had Moose Campbell, and also we had Ralph Sampson in Virginia. So my sophomore year, and going into my junior year, I had to play the center position. Really was a blessing for me because at that time, those were three of the best centers in the country. So if I could play against those three guys, I could play against anyone. So I gained a lot of confidence, and I had developed my game to shoot over those guys. And that kind of carried me into the NBA, playing against much taller, much bigger players. So it was a blessing that I got a chance to play in the ACC against some of the best talent in the country. So my transition is pretty smooth. When I first got there, before I got there, I got a chance to work out with Adrian Dantley in the summertime before I went into the pros. And anyone that knows Adrian Dantley, he has one of the best workouts in the country. And a lot of guys could not handle his workout, but I worked out with him in the summer. And then my rookie year, I got drafted by the New Jersey Nets, and a player by the name of Maurice Lucas is there. Probably one of the greatest power forwards ever played the game. So he took me on his wings and kind of taught me a lot about playing that power forward position. So I was really blessed to have that kind of tutelage going into the NBA also, along with the fact that I played in one of the greatest conferences in the country in the ACC.
Now, the game's changed so much since you played in the NBA. And I used to love the game back in the 80s and 90s when it was called inside basketball. You take the ball, you work it inside, you watch everybody muscle down low, throw some nice, beautiful elbows and things like that. Now the game's become more of an outside game where it's live and die by the three-pointer. Do you think eventually the game could ever get back to that inside type game that was so physical and so dominant back in the 80s and 90s?
Oh, great question, Larry. I had a conversation with Larry Harvey Arrington, one of the Hall of Fame sports writers today, and we talked about the same thing. The game of basketball, NBA basketball, constantly evolves. When I first started, we could hand check, like you were saying, we could throw an elbow, and the game was played within 12 to 15 feet from the basket. And as you said, it started on the inside, but it was inside out. So the ball go in first and work its way out. Now the game is you start on the outside at the three-point line, and very rarely goes inside. I see guys that are centers who rebound, get offense rebound inside. They don't turn to finish the play. They turn and kick it back out for a three-point shot. But to answer your question, the game will evolve at some point. NBA is a copycat league. At some point, it'll go back to ball going inside because most of it is predicated on your talent. Right now, the guards dominate the game. To shoot all the shots, and they're lucky to throw the ball into the centers. But yes, it will evolve. You will see the ball at some point, maybe not this year, next year, 2 or 3 years down the road, but eventually it'll get back to going back inside. But now you have all the analytics. The analytic guys come in and say, well, over in the corner over there, to shoot the three is a high percentage shot, and we feel that if we shoot them more three-pointers than shooting 2-pointers, we can win the basketball game. So the game is just constantly evolving.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm watching a game the other night, and just like you said, here's a rebound. All you have to do is maybe just, duke a guy once and put it back in, and you score, and they're dishing it out for a three-point attempt. To me, scoring 2 points used to be a good thing in the NBA, but I guess now you got to get 3. But we talk about that inside game, and I want you to hit a little bit on that. I mean, you're noted for being an all-time rebounder in the game, especially for the Nets. Talk about some of the most fierce battles and some of the most fierce competitors that you bumped heads and elbows with underneath the basket during your career.
Well, one of the most greatest, fiercest battles I had was with Karl Malone in Utah. Karl Malone would beat you up on offense, man. He's a tough customer. I mean, I had to guard him in the 1990 playoffs. In order for us to get to Utah, I had to defend him. And I went to bed early every night before I played Karl Malone. And you had guys like Maurice Lucas before Karl Malone, guys like Lonnie Shelton. And this is when you had to fight in that power forward position. You know, I was 228 coming out of college. In that power forward position, you know, guys are 260 and 270. So I had to learn how to battle those guys, and it was rough and tough in the NBA when I first came in. And now to watch the play, you know, no hand checking, you know, no hard fouls. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to watch it, but it's still a great game. So the game is really transformed, but it's still a great game. You know, those dudes were rough. I mean, and I recall one game I got into a fight with Lonnie Shelton, and it started on one end of the court, and we finished on the other end of the court. And most of the times I was backing up trying to get this guy off me. He's 300 pounds. So the game has changed, and matter of fact, the fine for the games, like I got fined like $5,000 or $10,000, and I was like, wow, man, this is incredible. But now guys get fined, you know, $75,000 or $100,000, and it's nothing. But the game is changed the aspect. I think they cleaned it up. You can show more of the talent of the players now, but it's still a beautiful game. And NBA is so special because you can tweak it, you know, and it can still keep the whole substance of the game of NBA basketball, which is very unique.
Yeah, now, you know, you're having a great career with the New Jersey Nets. At that time, they were called the New Jersey Nets.
Right.
And, you know, then back, I believe it's towards the 89 season, you traded to the Portland Trailblazers. Were you surprised at that time that you were traded? And what was your initial gut feeling remembering being traded?
Yeah, I had some great years in New Jersey. Matter of fact, I averaged a double-double, and every year I would get, you know, 1,000 rebounds, 1,000 points up into my last year in New Jersey. And I never requested a trade. I just felt that somehow between the management and bringing the right personnel for us to win in New Jersey. But when I got a call that I was traded to New Jersey, that to Portland that summer, it was probably the best decision that ever happened to me. The best thing to happen to me anyway, because that team that I went to, I had a player by the name of Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Duckworth, and these guys had played together for a long time. The only thing they needed was a power forward, someone that could score inside, some leadership. And that first year, we won over 50 games and went to the NBA Finals, which is like unheard of, because the years before I got there, they could only get to the playoffs in the first round when you get knocked out. So that was a great move on my part. I didn't know what to expect, but as far as winning and get a chance to play in the finals, that was a great opportunity.
Yeah, you had 3 Western Conference Finals, 2 NBA Finals. Talk about some of those teams. I mean, you played in I know you ended in New York back with the Knicks. You started in New Jersey with the Nets. What was some of the main differences between those teams that just seemed to be more enjoyable playing in Portland?
Well, you know, the thing about it's about management. I mean, a lot of players don't talk much about management. But if you have a team that's managed very well, you know, for example, the Nets were not a very good managed team. Portland was a very good managed team when they had Jeff Petrie. And it really made a difference because they had a vision. And the players that they brought in really complemented each other. The chemistry was like incredible in Portland. Also, they brought in Cliff Robinson. A lot of players don't talk about as much. He was a 6th man off the bench. He had a great career in the NBA, and his attributes to us getting to the finals were like incredible. So I think it came down to a difference of chemistry and a difference of just good, solid management in Portland. And that first year we won 50-some games, went to the finals. The second year was probably the best team we had. We lost to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and Magic Johnson at the end of the game took the ball and threw it into the court and let the time expire. We should have won that game, but they beat us at home, and we could never get a home court advantage back. And then the next year we go to the finals again, and we run into one of the greatest players that ever played the game, Michael Jordan. You know, my North Carolina native, he did not get me any breaks. he lit us up. Like I said, he's a special player. I think he's one of the greatest. I don't know if he's a GOAT or not, but he's definitely one of the greatest. So we lost to Chicago in 6 games. So it was just a great experience. And then from there, I went to New York, got a chance to play with Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley. some of those guys the last 2 years of my career.
Yeah, now, when you came into the league, if I remember, the league needed a lot of help.
Right.
I mean, the league was going through a time, but I believe it was yourself. You mentioned Jaminski. I believe that was, if I'm correct, the same time that Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were coming into the league as well. How did you see, because, I mean, basketball became just unbelievable back then from the 80s to the 90s. They had this period of time where it just reached this epitome. And talk about some of the things that you saw from the NBA in general, from the day you started to the day you finished, that just changed amazingly to make it so fan-friendly again.
Well, everyone has to understand that before Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came to the game, the NBA finals are tape delayed. The NBA is perceived as being too black and drug infested, especially after merging with the ABA. So David Stern, which I give him a lot of credit, along with the Players Association, really changed the perception of NBA basketball. So I came in a year after Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came in, and I really call it the golden age of basketball in a way because of how they transcended the game. It made it more of an international game. It made it more fan friendly, and just made it just a great sport. Those two guys we owe them so much credit for just changing NBA basketball in general. So that was part of that group of guys, early 80s, that kind of really changed the perception of the game. And I'm very proud of it because of what we've done, and things that we put in place. We came in has allowed the NBA to kind of get to pretty much where it is today, being very popular. The contracts that they have with ESPN and the marketing they do is second to none. And it is really a stable and it's a very viable business right now based on the changes and the evolution of the game it's had. And a lot of it started in that Larry Bird, Magic Johnson era.
Is it true to say back then when Bird and Magic and yourself and then all the other players at that time came in that basketball was a lot more of a team game than it is today?
Oh, there is no question about it. And I think, I never forget the Nike poster. Years ago, Nike had a poster. They called it like the Supreme Court. They had all the great players. They had marketed all those great players on that one poster. Moses Malone, Iceman, and it was more of a team sport. And then Michael Jordan came along, Magic Johnson came along, and Bird, and the NBA started marketing the superstar. The Bird, it was the Bird League. Then it was the Magic and Bird League. Magic and Bird handed the league to Michael Jordan. So the whole concept of team play kind of changed because they really took that one player, even like now, for example. You have LeBron James. It's almost like it's his league. And when I came in, it was more of a team. You market all the players. But now you market like one or two players on any given time. And I think it's helped the game to a certain extent, but it's also at the same time, I still believe that the game is a team game, but all the marketing NBA did kind of change the whole concept.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Talk about, you mentioned the NBA Players Association, which a lot of people may not realize, but you were a member of for I think 3 years, the member of the NBA Players Association. What was that like for you to be a member of that?
Well, yes, I was the president of the Players Association, and I've been a player rep ever since I've been in the league. Fritz Walker got me to be a player rep when I first got there as a rookie. And it's very interesting for me because I spent a lot of time with David Stern, and I call like his team of all-star lawyers doing collective bargaining. And it's really fascinating to understand the financial part of the league by being at the table, at the bargaining table, and bargaining over, benefits and bargaining over salaries and just bargaining over the whole aspect of the business of NBA basketball. And I got a chance to know David Stern a lot, and I really have a lot of respect for him as a business person and also what he brought to the game. David loved the game of basketball, and he negotiated that way. He was very fair. He always makes you feel good about getting a better deal than you got. He was a master at that. But it was fascinating just from the inside, watching how the whole game of NBA basketball worked and always making that bridge to the international players. You know, when I was the president of the NBA, president of Players Association, we were having discussions then about making the NBA an international game and bringing the international players over to play in the NBA and connecting the international players with NBA. And to look at it now and see where it is now, we have so many international players in this international league. And it really just makes me feel good that I have a hand in leading these players in that direction. So it's been a fascinating run for me, not only on the basketball court, but the legacy that I left off the basketball court in terms of my position as the president of the union.
You know, and I always wondered because, you know, players come into the league, especially younger players, and they understand, hey, I'm being paid to play a game, you know, do my job on the court, but they never understand the big picture. How important, now that you've been through it, you know, as a rep and as the president, of course, of the Players Association, how important do you think it is for the younger players and all players speaking that line to understand the game besides the court?
Larry, you're so on. I mean, that's an incredible question that you raised. You know, when we negotiated collective bargaining agreement back in, I think it was '94, Michael Jordan, a lot of superstars, they wanted to certify the union because they felt that to certify the union, they could get a better deal. And I said, guys, you know, Michael, Patrick, you guys, pump your brakes. I think we can get a better deal at the bargaining table because there was no way you're going to leverage David Stern because he had most of the cards. The deal was going to get done at the table. But I think the point I would like to make tonight is that the players that now are making the salaries that they're making the salaries because of the collective bargaining agreement that we negotiated back in the 90s, and the guys before me negotiated. Back in the 1990s, Chicago Bulls had their own television program. They were airing their own games. The NBA did not want the Chicago Bulls to air those games, so they took the Chicago Bulls to court. And out of that court case, we got exposed to all the finances of the league, and all the revenue were not included in that agreement, the collective bargaining agreement. So what we did, we made the NBA include all of those revenue in the collective bargaining agreement. So what you're seeing right now is that when I came in the league, you had to get better in order to get paid. But the players come to the league now, they have to automatically get paid because of the agreement that we struck, because the NBA has to pay the players a certain percentage of those revenue, where it wasn't like that before. So a guy may come off the bench and make $13 million. Say, well, how can this dude make $13 million? He's not worth $13 million. It all goes back to the collective bargaining agreement. NBA has to pay those guys their fair share of that revenue, and we're responsible for getting those guys that kind of revenue because we discovered in the lawsuit that NBA was not giving the players their share of the revenue. So when you see these guys making all this money outside of a guy like outside of LeBron James or the superstars, a guy coming off the bench making $10 or $8 million, that's because of the deal that we struck. It's not about, it doesn't equate to the kind of player he is. It just means that NBA has to pay him that kind of money because of the deal that we struck.
Right, which is incredible. Moving it forward, that's great.
Young players understand that.
Right, that's awesome. That's great. Let me ask you about a couple of things that happened and then we'll wrap it up. But talk about some of these monumental moments for you. Number 52, being retired by the New Jersey Nets. How much? I mean, you played for a team and you played for Portland. I know they've honored you too. I mean, but how? I mean, does it really feel at the end of the career to understand after it's all said and done that you're that respected where they retire your number?
Larry, when I was playing, you're in the moment. Like now, we're in the moment. You don't think about tomorrow. You're just thinking about what I need to do to get ready to play and what's my next opponent. Since I have retired, I had a chance to kind of sit down and kind of think about and reflect on my career. And I look back every day and I'm just amazed because my jersey has been retired in my high school at Rocky Mount Senior High in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. My jersey has been retired in Maryland. I'm in the Hall of Fame in Maryland. And also one of the 50 greatest players that played in the ACC. Yeah. Then my jersey retired in New Jersey. And it's been a phenomenal run. And I say that because this year, the last 2 years, I've been nominated for the Hall of Fame. And just looking at my numbers, I'm one of like 6 or 7 players that average a double-double. When I retired, I was in the top 12 all-time rebounders at 228 pounds. I am 3rd all-time in offensive rebounds. So there is a young group of kids at Fordham Prep in New York. They have done an analysis, a statistical analysis of my career to make an case for me for the Hall of Fame in February. So we'll see how that goes. But, to answer your question, God has blessed me, and I've played with some great players. I think I left my mark on the game. I left a legacy in the game. And I think I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And hopefully, I'll get that call at some point. But, I just hope
you get that call, buddy. You get that call. Tell me what it would mean to you. I mean,
it'll mean a lot because, my parents, my father had a 3rd grade education. My mother had a 5th grade education. And they instilled certain things in me in terms of being, they didn't give me the money, but they instilled things in me like work ethic. They instilled in me being consistent, showing up every day. And those things that they instilled in me propelled me to to have the career that I had. And I kind of owe it all to them. So it would mean a great deal to me because it would just kind of, it would be like an honor. I'll be honored through them by going into the Hall. And it just would be a phenomenal thing for the legacy and also part of their legacy too, to be a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Now, Buck, do you still watch ACC basketball?
I try to, Maryland's in the Big Ten now, but I kind of, I watch Duke some and I watch Maryland last couple of games I watched with Maryland. So I still enjoy watching it, probably more so than I did before. ACC basketball, to me, is still the best basketball.
There's people that doubt it, but I love this guy from NC State, Sebron. He is just, I love him. I watch him every time I can hear it. I'm in Charlotte, so I get a lot of the games. So just an amazing, amazing talent.
It is. I mean, like I said, the ACC never really had a drop-off. Certain conferences have a drop-off, but every year in and out, the ACC had the best teams. Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland when we were in the ACC. So it just, like I said, I just think it's just the best conference in the country. You're talking about basketball, Tobacco Road, basketball. It doesn't get any better than AC. And I grew up on AC basketball. Phil Ford's from my hometown who inspired me to play basketball. Buck Leonard, who baseball played in the Negro League from my hometown. So when I grew up, I had these huge figures in my hometown and inspired me to do great things.
Well, listen, my friend, I want to first of all thank you so very, very much taking time out of your schedule to join us on Frankly Speaking Sports. And I can tell you right now, I know one person that's definitely rooting for that call for you in come February.
All right, thank you, Larry. I appreciate it, man. Your questions were, man, one of the best interviews I had. You really was on the mark, your questions, and I really enjoyed talking to people that understand the game and can ask some really thoughtful questions. And I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Well, thank you very much. And if you ever need anything, we're here for you.
I appreciate you, man.
All right, stay safe.
Down for me, okay?
All right, buddy.
All righty, take care.
That was Buck